What's going on, guys? Welcome back to UnOrdinary Review and Discussion. Today we are talking about episode 275. And honestly, for just being another talking chapter, once again, as Uru has kept up the momentum, a lot still happens in this episode, and we get a lot of pretty cool information. So like I was saying, we also get some confirmation on a few things that I will talk about that I mentioned briefly in the last episode, which I said I would go into more detail later on. So, episode starts out with Doc arriving at the lab, and Leilah seems to have John and Sarah partially frozen. They aren't fully grayed out like when Sarah uses her abilities to freeze a person in place. Maybe this is possibly because Leilah can't do that yet at this time with her ability. Clearly there is a very large gap between Sarah's level and Leilah's level, despite them having the same ability. And also, what I want to point out, Caden is also, one more quick side note, Caden is also just unconscious sitting down in a chair, and it also appears that in this to be the case that rewind does not work on other people, because it seems like Leilah didn't try to do that to begin with. Because it seems like she was just waiting on Doc. So she was, more so it seems that she was just trying to keep them stable and everything. So, rewind doesn't work for healing other people. Honestly, I'm pretty okay with that. I think it kind of makes sense. Actually, maybe rewind can work on other people, but it has to be done in the moment. We've never really seen that, honestly. Sarah couldn't necessarily rewind John's wound because she wasn't there when it happened. And every time we have seen Sarah rewind something, it's been instantaneous. So, I guess we will just have to wait and see. And I don't think Uru would be against like telling us flat out, like at some point in the future, if like Sarah's like, oh yeah, I can't rewind other people's wounds. But we'll just have to wait and see. And I say that because it comes up to another point in a bit. So, we see a quick shot of 2 cups. It looks like Doc just made some tonics for the 2 and gives them to him. And Leilah thanks him coming despite their current circumstances, that he saved them. To which Doc retorts that it's not the first time that he's done that. But I still stand by what I said in my reaction. I don't think he's ever saved them from the brink of death. I still, yes, John severely beat a lot of people. He sent them to hospitals. But I don't think, based on what we've seen, John has ever put someone on the brink of death. So, that's all I'm saying. So, he then offers to look at Caden as well. But Leilah tells Doc that he's just resting. That because his ability takes a lot out of him if he brings multiple people. He then asks why he didn't try taking them to the hospital, but Leilah gives us a little more information on how his ability works, and we get more insight onto his limitations. This isn't as bad as a typical show don't tell type thing, because we ourselves have seen in the past, back when Caden brought Arlo and Sarah to that undisclosed location, that traveling with more people does take a lot out of him. And I think back then he even did mention as well something to that extent. But yeah, we've seen it before ourselves. Uru has showed us, it does strain him a lot. But she also does tell us that, going to familiar locations is a lot easier than going somewhere new. And that if he did try that, it would put his life at risk. I personally think that the information is a bit unnecessary, but I do still appreciate it. I do appreciate it because, I don't think we needed to ask why he didn't try taking them to a hospital, because I think Caden at least suspects someone in Spectre, and he knows that they don't trust the authorities because he himself doesn't either. So it makes sense that he wouldn't want to take them to a hospital where they would have to be questioned by police again. Though I just realized if John was taken to a hospital, we could have gotten to see William again, so we were robbed of that. Anyway. So, So then, Caden wakes up and tells Leilah about what happened. He refers to Atlas as an ice assassin. Now, this also kind of works out because as far as we saw, he only saw him use the ice attacks. And again, I feel like this is consistency on Uru's part. Not mandatory, but it's greatly appreciated, Uru. He didn't see Atlas use any of his water abilities. So, yeah, like I said, that right there, I do appreciate. So, what is up next? So, he does say that he doesn't know exactly who sent the assassin, but Leilah begins to tremble as Doc grabs her hand out of habit. And this kind of leads into this next part right here. So, quick side blurb. Caden knows that Kuyo is now safe, and he thinks on how he's going to explain this to him. And we can gather from this episode that Kuyo is definitely not in any way, shape, or form part of Spectre in this chapter. We kind of, like I said previously, we kind of could have inferred that, to begin with everything going on. But it is interesting to see that Kuyo is kind of involved now because he met Sarah before when, she just showed up to the university to get to Caden. And also he just had a dance with one of their assassins. So in some way, shape, or form, he is involved, similar to how Remy, Blyke, and Ison and Arlo are now involved. So, back to what I was talking about, Doc grabbing Leilah's hand. Kind of an awkward part for awkward placing, personally. Doc and Leilah just have a quick moment where they look at each other while they think the other person's not, and they kind of blush and everything, and Doc's like, man, Leilah's so freaking hot. He doesn't say that, but it's the moment of her shining as he looks at her and everything. I mean, I do hope that they get together, but it just feels like it was really awkwardly placed when, Leilah's almost dead, unconscious sister was just saved and, across the room. I just felt it was kind of weird, but, whatever. The heart wants what the heart wants. So, we then get a shot of John, who's beginning to shake in his sleep, and we see him having a nightmare of the incident happening again. And he wakes up screaming for Sarah as he sees her get stabbed within his dream. And he rushes awake to Doc's annoyance, and he sees Sarah and rushes to her, still unconscious. And I'm going to overanalyze this part of John waking up before Sarah real quick. It makes sense, I feel, that John woke up much earlier than Sarah because he's used to getting pretty badly beaten, and, Doc has mentioned in the past, he's had a lot of time to work on tonics because of John. So, and Doc has also said before that he hasn't made, I believe it was when he helped Arlo, said that he hasn't had a lot of practice for making tonics for Arlo. So I think kind of just reminding that different people require different tonics. So he's had a lot of practice for John, and John's body is also, more used to getting damage like that, so his body was able to recover a bit quicker. He is still damaged because moving around does actually hurt him a little bit too still. So yeah, I think it's really cool, that a nice little detail that John woke up a lot farther than Sarah did, just because he's more used to it than she is. Now, it could also just be that he woke up first for story purposes. Get to that in a second. Anyway, so Doc tries to calm John down by saying she just needs to rest, and John almost elbow slams Doc in the face, but he catches it, and he says he should have let John rot in the street. But I do have a problem with that sentence, and it's not that it's out of character for Doc. No, it's completely in character for Doc. It's completely in character for Doc to say something like that. But my problem is, it goes back to what Doc said about putting his job on the line. You didn't do that, dude. You had no control over whether John stayed in that alleyway or was brought here to Leilah. That was all Caden. Had you said something I should have just let you, had he said something I should have just, left when I saw it was you or something like that, fine. But Doc, like, you had no control over that. Just like how, like, you know, you saying you risked your job for Leilah, that's not really true. So, I just feel like, you know, it's kind of bit of a, there's kind of an inconsistency when it comes to Doc. I'm gonna say that. That's what I'm gonna say. So, John then realizes that Doc is right next to him, and he wonders what's going on. He then sees Leilah and Caden, and he asks who they are. And Leilah walks forward, and she's finally meeting John. And it was honestly pretty cool. You know, just like these two people who've like heard so much about each other, like they're finally meeting face to face. Like I mentioned in the last review and discussion, Leilah didn't know who John was, so when she called Doc, she referred to them as Sarah and her friend. So Leilah's finally getting to see John. So yeah, worlds colliding, man. It was pretty cool. So she then she says that she's going to explain everything to John. And like I said in the reaction, we don't need to see John being brought up to speed on everything, because we, the audience, we're up to speed on everything and how John got involved too. So after she does bring him up to speed, he thinks back on everything, and he says that he thought after the Rowden incident they'd finally get some normalcy back, and he was fine without his ability. He hasn't been lately. He's been having that feeling of being empty, like he said. So he thinks about having his ability back again, saying he could have kicked that guy's ass, and honestly, I think he could have. I think he could have wiped the floor with Ice Guy. Yeah, he could have easily wiped the floor with Iceman, with Atlas. So Leilah then tells John that they can hide out there for now, and she'll do whatever she can to shield them from Spectre. But John fixates on the word hide, and he thinks, no, I'm sick of hiding. And both Johns think this. And Uru brought back the double text when it came to John's thoughts and everything, like back in his fight with Sarah, and, you know, previously and everything too, like when he fought the Royals. So it was really interesting, you know, because the double text would always represent what John was saying to himself, what John would, like, you know, yell at everyone, but behind it would always show how John actually felt. When he said high tiers are all monsters, he would really feel, I'm a monster, I'm a high tier, and I'm the monster. Or, like, you know, people can't change, and he's saying, I know people can change, I can't. You know, stuff like that. But it was really cool to see both John both say that to himself and also truly feel that he's sick of hiding. So yeah, a nice little detail and that I like. And I feel like this is Uru showing us that John is starting to come to terms with who he is. He's starting to come at peace with himself. There are still some other things that he does need to work on as well, but it's just nice to see, you know, him, what he wants and what he truly feels. He then asks Leilah for how to access the recovery device because he wants his ability back. And again, you guys know how I feel about this whole cripple John thing. I'm not gonna go over it. Honestly, if John is getting his ability back, cool, great. Like, you know, the man's here. We know that Sarah does have a plan to steal it. So if they are gonna end up doing that and they do it now, like, hey, cool, more power to them. I feel like there might be a delay in that though, or possibly not, because in the next episode, Leilah could probably tell John, like, oh, you're in luck. Sarah actually wanted access to that fairly soon, so I can get you in there now. I don't think it'll actually be that easy, let's be real. But she probably will say something along the lines of, you know, hey, like, we can get you in pretty soon, or I can get you in pretty soon, because, you know, Leilah's going behind Spectre's back with all this. So yeah, honestly, a pretty good episode. I wouldn't say as good an episode as 274, but it's still really good nonetheless. So I think I'll give episode 275. I think I'll give episode 275 a 7.7 out of 10. Level 7.7. So yeah, pretty good, pretty good. You know, more nice little tidbits that, you know, Uru throws in just to make things nice. That part with Doc is really confusing, but I'm glad to see that Doc's back and, you know, he's healing the boy up again, because at the end of the day, we know that Doc does care about his students. So yeah, next week we are back again with more UnOrdinary. It's returning from the break, and I'm excited to see what comes next, because yeah, John's involved now, whether he wants to be or not. John is involved with Spectre. Well, he already was, but he's getting deeper into it, because as Leilah did say in this episode, someone in Spectre, it's not even Orin that wants John dead, now that I think about it. It was Atlas who tried to kill John. But, you know, he might report about John, and, you know, Orin probably will order, like, hey, like, take care of him too. Doesn't matter. Like, you know, kill whoever you need to. So, both exciting and terrifying, honestly. But yeah, that's going to be it for this review and discussion. It is still a really good episode, despite, you know, my problems with decisions that Uru has made. It's still a good episode. And yeah, let me know what you guys thought down and below in the comments. I will be back next week for reaction to episode 276, and I'm excited for the return, as I always am. And yeah, that'll be it for today, guys. So as always, see you, Space Cowboy.